hippopotamuses, and hippopotamuses like me too.
Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I am here with Cathy Benedetto, and oh my gosh, you guys, she is a singer, a songwriter, an actress, a poet, a writer, a lover of words, a host of an open mic, and I think I'm forgetting everything, but oh my gosh, she does so many things. Welcome to the show.
Acupuncturist and computer person and reference librarian, although not formally trained as a reference librarian.
She does it all. She does it all. Well, as we're coming out of the intro there, we're having a little bit of fun with the kind of a Monty Python style silliness. So hence why I am dressed like a lumberjack, and I'm okay. Well, I guess we'll start with this one, Cathy, because it's kind of how I first met you and how I first got to know you. And I did talk to Tamel a little bit about it, but with the Art of Words open mic that you co-host, I'm curious to hear kind of your perspective and kind of, had you always wanted to host or put together an open mic there in Aiken?
Here's the story that I had made up about it, because I think everything we say is a story. Everything we say about ourselves and our lives and everything we say about everybody else is a story too. And it can change. So this is the story I'm frequently saying, is that I met Tamel several years ago at some open mic in Augusta. And I don't even know how we exactly became friends, but we were on Facebook or something. And then every now and then would chat, and every now and then just show up in the same place. And one day we had a conversation where he had said that he's part of another Aiken poetry group, that he'd really like to start a spoken word poetry open mic in Aiken. And I had been thinking for a long time, so I work at the Aiken Library, had been thinking it would be nice to have some kind of open mic thing there, but I wasn't really ready to do it. I don't know that the library was ready for us to do it. But when he said that, I thought, well, if I have this person who's really gung-ho about it, and if I could get him to come run it, I could be the co-host and be the face of the library there, and help coordinate that. And maybe my boss would let me do it. And so a year ago, so last January, we had our first open mic, and we had 29 people show up, which for an adult program was great.
That just tells me that there's a huge hunger for it,
Yes, exactly. And I was amazed. And the poetry was great. And we had all different ages, colors, shapes, sizes, religions, genders, whatever, that were there. And everyone was very respectful and listened and enjoyed. And we had a number of people who spoke. And on that first one, we had people actually giving feedback after each poet. But we stopped that after the first one because I was concerned about not having a little bit of control over that, for the sake of, especially for younger people.
Right.
I was afraid something might get said that might hurt somebody's feeling or make them uncomfortable, because we get a lot of people, not a lot, but some of our people come in and they're very, very new, maybe the first poem they've ever done or the first presentation they've done. And, they may be crying or shaking or literally in front of us, and, being very vulnerable, which I love vulnerability, but I know how it doesn't feel very good when it's happening. And in fact, I know years ago when I was in acupuncture school, I was being interviewed by one of my teachers in front of the class. I picked a day when I felt strong and wasn't going to break into tears. I used to be a crybaby. But of course, within one question, I was sobbing. And, but what he and my classmates all said was that when you show your vulnerability, when you show that side, it allows us to show that too, that we're able to access that too. So it's very true.
I think that's true. I think that, me having hosted open mics over the years, that you don't really want to do immediate feedback, because it kind of kills the ebb and flow of the show.
Right.
And having been to your open mic several times now, I know that Tamel is kind of just doing that thing where he's talking, but I kind of just see him do this with the watch, or he's looking at the clock.
Oh yeah.
And people will come in, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, 15, 30 minutes in, and you're going like, ooh, we got to get these people through, and we got to get out of it.
And it really depends on the day, depends on how many people we've had sign up to actually do the performances or the readings as to how much we can get in. And we had to finally say, keep it under 5 minutes. Of course, I'm probably one of the biggest offenders, because by the time I get up there, I have no idea how much time my stuff is taking. So I'm just as bad. But we had people that have taken 10 or 15 minutes on one piece. And, it's hard to stop them. And I don't want to stop them. But at the same time, we have to be able to continue on. And of course, then we have this terrible thing that happens at 30 minutes before, where the speakers at the library start announcing that the library is going to be closing in 30 minutes. So that interrupts things.
I've been caught in it. I've been caught in it.
Yes.
But that's just the natural progression. That's just the way things go. I mean, one thing that I've tried to do, and I try to let anyone that's not just younger than me, but maybe newer at doing the mics, is try to keep the spiely intro stuff to a minimum, because your explanation or your intro should not be longer than the poem.
Right.
Some people will get up there and they'll tell this crazy life story, and you're like,
yes, and
then
that's
the poem is like
happened.
8 lines, and you're like, really?
And that definitely happens, and it's happened with young ones, and it's happened with older ones. It's definitely happened with me. I'm notorious for not really knowing what I want to say and just being very spontaneous and totally losing track of time. So I'm always glad for somebody to. I'm one person. I'm not offended by somebody, saying, "Okay, we want to know."
Like,
we
reel
really
it in.
hear. Yeah. So I'm still learning.
Well, we're also learning, but let me ask you this,
learning.
because I think folks would like to know that, if you hop back in your Wayback Machine of choice, when do you remember first getting involved in songwriting or music or poetry or acting? Was it all kind of at the same time?
No, everything came. Well, first of all, I have a song called Singing in the Cradle, which I wrote because my oldest sister told me that I was singing recognizable tunes in the cradle. And my second oldest sister, I'm youngest of 9 children or siblings. But in fact, even today, my second oldest sister told me that she remembers me singing, and she even said the song, which is the one I always remember, which was Lonely, Lonely, Lonely Little Girl, or it's either that one or it was Silly Boy, Silly Boy. She doesn't care. Silly boy, she doesn't care. She doesn't love you. Go and find someone new and don't be a fool, silly boy. But she remembered me doing that when I was very young. Well, I remember literally putting my hand on the arm of the sofa to stand up. So I had not even learned to walk yet when I was singing. But my oldest sister said literally in the cradle, I was singing recognizable tunes. So I know that I was singing, and I think it's because I was lonely and music kept me company. Then the next thing that would happen was there were a couple of old scratchy Christmas records that were down in our basement. And I used to go down in the basement when everybody else was off doing older children things like playing baseball that I wasn't included in because I was too little and might get hurt and they didn't want to have to worry about me. So I'd go down there and I'd be singing Christmas songs for hours on end. And then one of my sisters, my third sister, actually let me have access to her record player and her records. So I grew up in the 60s, listening to all kinds of the 60s music, I can't tell you what it is right now, but I listen to all kinds of stuff. And then my family, we would maybe once every month or two would have a sing-along in our living room where everybody that was home, a number of them played guitar, or one of them played on drums a little bit, and but we all sang, and we would do the Blowing in the Wind, and we would do some songs in Spanish, because my mother grew up in Mexico, and she had some traditional Mexican, songs that she did. And she also had a classical singing background. So, although I don't think she did those in there, but I got exposed to a lot of that then, a lot of the Where Have All the Flowers Gone, and the Kingston Trio, all the stuff that everybody my age, and all the folk singers my age, that's where their roots have come. Mine came from there too. And of course I thought I was going to be just great. And it's like now I look up and I can't believe that all these people are still alive. I thought they were ancient when I was a little girl, and I was singing those when those songs, a lot of them first came out.
Well, think about how old Pete Seeger must have seemed then.
Right.
And then he lived like another, 40 years?
Oh, yeah.
50 years?
And I actually briefly met him. I mean, he wouldn't know me. I was living in the DC area because I was going, my college, my undergraduate degree was in drama. And I 1 year volunteered for the American Folklife Festival. And Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie and Ronnie Gilbert and some other people that I can't remember at the moment were all there performing on the stage I was volunteering at. And so it was the first year they were doing this new show that was, I think it was a tribute to Woody Guthrie. And they were getting ready, they were preparing that tribute to go to Wolf Trap over there in Maryland, or in Columbia, Maryland. And, or no, I think that's where it was. But anyway, they were preparing that because that weekend they were going to be going there. The next weekend they were going to be going there and performing that. And I was just there to like watch their guitars and bring them water and that kind of stuff. And I got a couple of their signatures, but that's why I say I knew who they were, but they sure didn't know who I was. But even before that, when I was in high school, my senior thesis was on folk music. And I remember I did my research on, using some of the books from that period or about those people, Pete Seeger. And I can't, my mind's blank right now of who the man who really did a lot of the gathering of that. And I can't think of his name, but I'll find it later, but it won't be today. But
well,
somewhere I still have
kind of. So we figured out the music. So how did you get involved with acting and poetry? Was there separate?
The acting, when I was a little girl, one of my brothers, he used to do plays at school, and he would practice some of his stuff, and and wrote some poetry, and I'd hear that, and he did some Edgar Allan Poe things, and then one of my sisters was very involved I say very involved. She did a few musical theater things where she danced, like she was in, I can't think, I should know these musicals by heart, but she was in 2 or 3 of them. And my mom used to take me not only to see those, but she took me to some operettas. So I got a little bit exposed to classical music. She took me to see The Fantastics, which was one of her favorites, which is one of my favorites. And she took me to that at the Macon Opera. I grew up in Macon, Georgia. So the Opera House, we saw The Fantastics, and we saw several musicals, like the one set in Austria. I should know what it is.
Sound of Music?
Sound of Music, yes, of course.
That's the only one you think of.
Yeah. So anyway, my sister Nina had been in some of those. And so then when I was in probably about eighth grade, I auditioned for a Christmas play at Macon Little Theater. And I had the part of Anetka, who was just one of the dancers. Now, I am one of the clumsiest people, so for me to be a dancer was kind of ridiculous, but I was one of the older children in there, and that's what they had the older children do. And it was really just a circle dance where you were holding hands and stuff, so it was okay. But that was my first show, and I had so much fun not only doing the show, but getting to know the director and volunteering backstage. And so from that point, from about 8th grade until I left Macon, I used to volunteer quite a bit at the Macon Little Theater, often backstage, but sometimes I was in shows. I played one of the wives in The King and I, a nameless wife, but got to sing in the chorus in that. And let's see, I did some backstage work for South Pacific. Not everything was musical theater. I remember doing some backstage work for The Crucible, which was one of the best plays. That director just did an amazing job, and the actors, they had some amazing actors in that. But I just, I read a lot of plays, and I participated backstage. Here I was barely into high school, and I was stage managing and assistant directing. Well, not directing. I was either an assistant stage manager or a stage manager or a lighting or sound person, or helping to build props or clean rocks when there was nothing else to do. And they were looking for something to put this young person to work at, but what it was for me, and besides the music and the drama, to be able to participate with other people in something, not as a student or as the youngest in 9 in a Catholic family, I felt valueless, and I felt not included. That I was just a little girl who was really more in the way than my company desired or my help desired. And it became part of my regular stuff in life. If I want to be part of life, I need to participate. I have to find ways to do it, so that I had to keep up with the boys, keep up with the girls, keep up with the adults, be helping. So I'm always using my hands. I'm always using my mind in whatever way to help other people. And it's a wonderful thing. Sometimes it's a little much, but it becomes, not a problem, but it's been great because, I'm outside so you can hear.
I'm not smirking at you. I'm smirking at that kid.
No, I was just realizing that there's some child out there that's yelling. So, but anyway, and not to be, angry at anybody or critical of anybody or bemoaning, maybe I bemoaned it when I was little, but it is what it is, and it made me who I am. But for the theater part, to be able to participate with not only teenagers, but more so the adults, and to be treated as if the work I was doing was valuable, even if it was washing rocks, that was really important to me. I could, and they would tell me when I needed to be quiet and, keep people quiet backstage or keep them all, so I had responsibilities that it was an honor, truly an honor to work with them. And that's still true of theater. I mean, I'm not doing that stuff anymore. I haven't really been doing any theater in a number of years, but every now and then I get pulled in. Like I got pulled in recently back in a couple of months ago to be in a show. And it was a version of, well, it wasn't a version, it was a Dracula thing. And I ended up writing a song that I sang in it because the person who asked me to do it said, could I rewrite the song, Those Were the Days, My Friend, to something set for Transylvania? And so I wrote Those Transylvania Days, and even sang in Russian at the end of it because their spouse told me that the song, actually its origins were from Russia several hundred years ago. So I looked up that song. So I knew that the melody would be in public domain. And I already knew the song because I've sung Those Were the Days, My Friend. That was in the 60s. That was a very popular song. And that's one that I used to love singing. So, but I took it and I totally changed it for Those Transylvania Days. And it was a lot of fun. It came out a lot of fun. And then I added in the Russian because I actually took not a Russian verse, but the title of the Russian song was, I can't remember at the moment, but it had to do with being on the road. So I took something that meant that. I kind of came up with a little translation and sang that. And one of my colleagues at work is Ukrainian, and she was able to correct my pronunciation so that I was able to get the Russian sounding correct. So that was fun. So I'm always kind of I look at everything in life. I got so many different interests and knowledge from so many different places. And it's, everything's a metaphor for this or whatever. And I always pull things in from all different kind of places. And it's just fun to mix them and match them and be creative with them.
I agree. Well, before I have you read a poem, I do want to kind of get a little bit of background and kind of how you first got exposed to poetry. Was it going to but not open mic when you were younger, or someone gifted you a book, or how did that?
Poetry was at school. The poetry would have been something just regular standard stuff in my Catholic grammar school. I went to Catholic kindergarten, grammar school, high school, and college. But in my school, we just, whatever the regular stuff that all the school kids in the private school had to do, we did that, and we had to write some. Later, I found out that my father, as a little boy in first grade, had written one. Can't find the thing, but the only thing I remember from it was it had a line in it that said, I had a dog, his name was Rover, and when he died all over. And so silly songs, but to think of my father being silly was like, oh, he's such a serious man. So to think of him as a little boy writing that was just amazing. But my earliest stuff, which I don't have, would have been, I know it was something like To the Virgin Mary, some poem to the Virgin Mary. I don't have that anymore. Later, I started writing songs. I started playing guitar in 7th or 8th grade. And I, as soon as I learned 6 or 9 chords, I decided to write my first song. And I'm not sure if this was the one. I think it was one that was like sitting in a room, no one is around, loneliness will find me somehow, but so the first ones were about loneliness and about looking for love, and about friendship and that kind of thing. And I've had like different times of my life. It's like everything changes every so many years in terms of what the themes are or the styles. My background comes from that folk style, but it also comes from musical theater. And then I listened to a lot of like Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and, all the great jazz and blues, all of those, which I thought were beyond me as far as being a musician. but I loved their voices. I loved the complexity of what they were singing, and I would try to not sound like them, but to be able to reach those ranges and to build to grow my voice. And so it's really gone through a lot of different stages. At one point, I've had a couple of points where I stopped singing altogether. This last 10 years, I haven't stopped altogether, but I'm not singing or playing guitar nearly as much as I did most of my life. I think that working full time and having other adult responsibilities and concerns, and also just feeling sad, for the world, and also because I think I blame menopause for releasing my inner anger. Everything was repressed until then. And then I started writing stuff that was really angry. Even one that says, I'm so angry these days, I don't know if I can sing.
Well, I don't know if you heard the story from, I guess this must have been in the mid to late 80s when George Carlin had a heart attack. And he had repressed a lot of his anger, and he was much more of a mellow guy, much more of a wordplay kind of person.
Yes.
More that was his style of comedy in his stand-up. And then when he had his heart attack, his doctor told him, "You have got to let this anger out. It is literally like a vice. Your arteries are going to harden. Like you've got to get this out." And so he still did the wordplay, the cleverness, but there were times when I remember just being like, and it was like. It seemed like a huge left turn for him.
Right.
You know what? I mean, your body doesn't lie to you.
That's right.
Your body is telling you, like,
right.
If you don't do this, it's going to go bad for you. But okay, so
one of the things I did about 10 years ago, I think it was whenever 2016 was probably, I went to Nashville to take a songwriting class with, or workshop with Mary Gauthier and Don Henry and Beth Nielsen Chapman. And I know that Mary Gauthier, one of her things was, you got to tell the truth. Of course, I know that's not really even her. It was like, I think it's 3 chords and the truth is like a long time songwriter's rule, and it's like, whatever you do, you got to be truthful. And I know that most of my stuff has been very personal and just trying to deal with my own response to life. But with my with my more fun stuff, it's me trying to be fun by seeing, can I imagine how somebody else might see this? Or can I imagine being that character, being that person? And, or maybe taking something from a novel and working with that character or that situation and really becoming more of a storyteller, which I never thought I could create things that weren't me. But, I'm still kind of on this search for, what do I write that will have meaning to people other than me, that will have emotion other than me? The weird thing is the stuff that I've written that came from me, a lot of it turns out when I wrote it, I didn't understand it. And it took me 20 or 30 years to begin to understand it. And it's valid for not just me. And then the other thing is when I do let those songs out, which I held them back because I thought, oh, this is too weird. This is too strange. This is too me. Somebody's going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm, whatever it is they're going to think, they're going to judge me harshly. And I didn't want that. So I wouldn't share that stuff. But it's interesting because when I do share it, inevitably there's at least one person who needed to hear it. And when I'm feeling really bad about anything and not wanting to perform or whatever, I get to where the only reason I'll perform is somebody has really asked me to, and I go and I do it. And I try to be thoughtful about what I'm doing, choose something that's appropriate for the situation. But I tell myself that they may not be able to express that. And I may be the only one not the only one who could, but I do have a unique capacity, I think, for expressing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Bring up stuff for other people.
Right. Let's not keep the people waiting any longer. Let's give them what they want, which is a poem or a song by Cathy. If you have something handy you'd like to share.
I'm gonna try and find this one that I found today that I don't really remember writing, which is pretty common for me. That I thought was kind of funny.
Okay.
Let's see. I had it a little while ago.
That's all right. Take your time.
Here.
Glad to hear there are no more random screaming children running around in the streets.
That's right. I may have to just pick whatever I can find first.
I would just go with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't even put too much thought into it. They're going to like whatever you do no matter what.
Okay. This isn't, I don't know if it's so much fun or not. I've written some songs that I call my bar songs. And this is one that I wrote based on one of my library patrons, one of my older library patrons had said something about the doctor didn't want him, doing this or that or whatever. Don't, but I can still enjoy good looking women and cheap light beer. So I wrote this song based on, so I'm not a bar person, but I've been going to some open mics at bars, or was for a while, and listening in other people's stuff and trying to find something that would, that I could write that in my imagination, this is something somebody might think or want to write. The only thing, whoops, let me just. Close enough.
What's a half step between friends?
Yeah. The only things I don't get tired of, you told me, good looking women and cheap light beer. If I have enough of one, I forget about the other. If both are available, there's nothing to fear. I don't have to wait too long or go too far. What'll it be tonight, Joe? I ask myself. Then I pick up the stool and mosey up to the bar. Good looking women and cheap light beer. I know I can always find good company here. Nuts may be stale and the songs may be loud. You find me with a cold one staring out at the crowd. I can't afford a woman, but I can afford the beer. Allergies to crab, allergies to bees. I get sick from too much liquor. It knocks me to my knees. My doctor says it's poison, but I'm all right with these good looking women, cheap light beer. Gal on my arm, a gallon of brew. There is the charm. Whatever's on tap, I'm agreeable. How about you? Good looking women and cheap light beer. I know I can always find good company here. Can't afford the woman, but I can afford the beer. Never get tired of a mother cheer.
Hey, all right. Great stuff. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm trying to find another one that's a little funnier.
Okay. In the meantime, let me ask you this. Do you remember your first open mic experience? Was it reading poetry or was it playing music?
It would have been music, I'm sure. I never really even knew that open mic poetry existed until I moved here about 20 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
When I moved here, I moved to Aiken, and I went to a music open mic in Augusta, and then I went to another open mic that was a combination of music and poetry, and that was at John Stoney Cannon's place that he used to have called Mad Studios. And
Okay.
I think that's where I met Tamel. And they did, Catherine Zickgraff, I remember very well, was a major spoken word poet there. And there were a lot of spoken word poets, and I was really impressed not just by the poetry, which actually it was new to me to have that spoken word stuff, and I wasn't sure how I felt about the poems themselves. But what amazed me was, again, the variety of people. You had Black, you had white, you had religious stuff, you had street stuff, you had some foul language, you had some religious language, and it was all in one place, and everyone was listening. And that meant a lot to me, that could happen. And that's part of what I wanted to happen with the poetry open mic when we started it, was to be able to have that open space. But anyway, that's where I went for the poetry. And in fact, I learned a lot there. One of the times I was invited to perform for some kind of a group that had to do with trans and LGBT stuff. And I didn't really know anything about trans anything, and was amazed by the people there. And I don't even remember what I sang for them, and I know I've written some stuff, but I've never turned it into anything yet, because it's like I felt like I was so new to it that even though I wrote about it, it has just felt, it's still transforming for me to learn to understand it. But the people that I met, and I'm sure there were other people that I didn't know were trans in the past that I wouldn't have known.
Mhm.
But now it's interesting for me, because I feel more comfortable with them in their new genre, I'm gonna say genre, gender, than when they were in their other gender, or in their other persona. That when someone is more comfortable with themselves, when they find who they are and they can be that person, they're more comfortable to be with. And the joy, the love it's not about sex, it's about identity. And we all need to be able to claim our identity. I think we go from childhood to adulthood, trying to find ourselves. And that can be in all kinds of different ways, whether it's what our job is, or what our studies are, or whether it's, anything. So anyway, that was a very powerful thing. Again, to be witness to that, to participate with that, was very powerful for me. So I also felt that it was important to have that be somehow included. But none of that was stuff I was looking for. And I never really thought, I probably did think of myself somewhat as a poet before I was writing songs, but then I'd let those aside and lost all, well, I didn't lose all of it. I had some stuff I'd written, but once I started writing songs, I didn't take poetry real seriously. Didn't take myself seriously as a songwriter either, until after that Mary Gauthier workshop, when I learned a little more about how to be intentional with what I was writing. And, and then since doing the open mic, I'm beginning to see myself again as a poet. We're beginning, like Tamel and I actually went to see the Langston Hughes performance, a one-man show about Langston Hughes. And before I went, I read some of Langston Hughes' poems, because I didn't remember having read them, very many of them, in school before. And they were wonderful, and they were so simple. And it's like, I actually need to go back and study these. I need to study some of it to learn to simplify. And anyway,
well, that's just the natural order of writing and learning. Yeah. And one question I want to ask you, because you have said that you're sort of relatively new to open mics and poetry and things like that, is have you performed somewhere where you're reading a poem or doing a song, and then this invariably always happens to me, especially if it's a new place or something, where you read three different poems, you'll get 3 to 5 to 10 people coming up to you after the show and saying, like, I like your poem about this, and I'm going like, what, huh? And so it's just the natural thing where something you may have written 10 or 15 years ago, you wrote about an experience you had or an observation that you made. And then you get distance from it, and then you read something somewhere, and then somebody comes up to you and they say, this is what I got out of it. And you just have to go, right, okay, because you don't want to dismiss their whatever their experience was, but in your mind you're going like, I
Yeah.
have no idea what they're talking about because, you
Yeah.
wrote this thing 15, 20 years ago and you had a certain thing in your mind when you wrote it. But then when this other person, this stranger comes up to you and says, well, this is what I got out of it. You don't want to say that's not what it is or that's not what
Oh,
it's
no,
about.
no,
But
no. I think they're all
it
valid.
always is a head scratcher where you go like, so that's happened to me sometimes where I perform something and I go in my mind, I'm thinking like, I never would have put that
Yeah.
together at all. Has that happened to
It's
you?
great. And then it creates another, then I find I start creating something new from that. It's not the same one. It's like, oh, wow, maybe I need to think about that particular perspective or issue. And if I do
Well, I
that
have to
more,
even say, even on a selfish level, that
yeah,
sometimes, like, this was like 15 years ago, a woman came up to me at an open mic and said something about, I'm just laughing at the memory, that she got something out of a poem, and then I went, huh. And then the next time somebody came up to me and they're like, so what was that poem about? And I just totally
yeah,
cherry picked what she had said, and they were like, wow, that's really profound. I said, I know, right? Because
yeah,
you never, it's like people are totally different. Everyone has their own way of thinking.
right.
Everybody comes at it from a different angle. So, yeah,
I
I'm sure
think of
that's
it like
happened to
going
you.
to a museum and seeing a work of art. There's whatever the artist is trying to communicate or put out there, but what you got so many different types of people, and we don't see things the same way. You
Right.
stand at one side of the painting or one side of the song, and it means one thing. It's one side of the elephant. I don't know if you that story about the elephant,
Oh, yeah.
but one person notices this aspect and one notices that, and you know, I don't know. I will say that I do feel a certain level of responsibility, or I try to be responsible. Of course, sometimes it bites me in the butt because I forget. Like the time I did the art of words, and I put a poem online. It wasn't mine. It was I can't think of her name at the moment, but one of my favorite artists recently is a lesbian poet who has a lot of stuff on Facebook, and she's got cancer, but she writes
Mhm.
the most beautiful, I think, just the most beautiful poems, about living and love. And I had not listened to the video that I picked. I just wanted to find one by her. Her name's Andrea Gibson. And the one that I picked, it turned out to be something about coming out or meeting the parents of the lover. And I was like, oh no, I've got this 91-year-old minister and his wife who are sitting in the fifth row back here, and this is up here. But I didn't want to turn it off. And it still had beautiful stuff in it, but I'm like, oh gosh, I got to be careful about political issues, LGBTQ issues, any of that at the library because it's a public space. And I was like, am I going to get the library in trouble because I played this? And I'm like, it's one thing for me to say who I am or what's going on in my life, but I have to be careful about that in certain places. The other thing is there's an awful lot of really troubled people. And I may write something that's so personal, or I think it's just personal or it's funny, or I know what it means, but even my wife doesn't necessarily know what it means until I tell her what it means. And so strangers definitely probably not going to know what it means. I use a lot of, I don't know if you call them double entendres or hidden language, something in my background, in my studies, told me about people who were rebellious and about how they protected themselves while being writers or poets or songwriters, where they would write something, say, about a butterfly, and it was really about getting free of the prison, or, so the word is subversive. And so I felt like so many things in me I felt would be judged. So I would try to say it nice, say it in a way that didn't really say what was really going on, but to try to explain how I felt without really telling the truth about my anger or my fear or the ugliness of something. So that's gone into a lot of my, what I'd say, my darker stuff. And, it's hard to, but it's like, how do I write something about those things in a positive way, in a way that is, and in a way that's responsible? Because I don't want to hurt people and I don't
Mhm.
want to start somebody fighting. It's like I'm getting ready to do something this coming weekend and I'm still trying to decide on songs. Well, what I have to think about is what the purpose of this is. It's a fundraiser that's in honor of someone's daughter who died some years ago. So I need to find songs. It's not time for me to do something political. And, maybe it's never time for me to do something political.
Yeah, those situations just usually call for something uplifting, that
Right.
people can kind of rally behind.
Yeah. But even to put something online, it's like, I mean, not only couldn't it be of danger, literal danger to me, which I never thought I would feel a fear of that, but I do feel that right now. But that because I got a big mouth and I'm open-minded as hell, you know. When I moved to Aiken, I got real scared. I had just left my ex-husband and I had thought I'm in a very liberal Bible Belt town and these people are going to hate my guts because I'm liberal in my thoughts. Whether my choices are liberal or not doesn't matter, but I'm liberal in my thoughts and in my caring for people. And I have friends who are gay, lesbian. I knew it was a possibility in my life, but it wasn't so much who I was, and I wasn't something I was looking for. But I thought just the fact that I could even think about that as a possibility, I thought people are going to hate my guts and they may even torture me. It was the first time in my life I had that fear. And my wife has had to, I don't know what has happened, but I know that she had times in her life when her life was definitely threatened. I still haven't had that happen, but it could happen now. I do feel in the what's going on.
It's scary times to live in.
And so for me to even say this is very risky, but I chose when I entered the partnership I'm in now, and even before I entered the marriage, I chose to love. In fact, I had decided long ago, people can judge me or they can tell me you can't do this, but the one thing no one's ever going to tell me is who to love or how to love or when to love. And I had made that decision back when I was probably 20 years old, before I, had made real choices about who I'm going to be with permanently, and I went through all my errors of my ways or whatever, finally found someone that by our being together, it empowers both of us, and we empower other people through the fact that we're well taken care of. But anyway, I had decided, even if I'm afraid, I'm going to say who I am. I'm going to say who I love and not be embarrassed or ashamed, because there's going to be other people who can't say it. And I've already lived a very full life. If something happens to me, I'm not really worried about it. Sometimes I get scared, but mostly I feel like it's up to me to be honest for the sake of the people who can't. And anyway, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I wanted to make sure you got to speak.
I found the one I was looking for.
Okay. Well, before you get to that one, let me just ask you this one real quick, because I want to make sure we get to the questions that we got here. So, do you have experiences performing your own work outside of South Carolina, and how would you say the reception has been versus like a local crowd versus performing outside of town?
My experiences, some of them have been on stage in scripted performances, and those I've always had a very, very good response from people. I've had people who thought I was some visiting opera star because I was in the Mikado, and I, had to sing somewhat operatically, and I'm not classically trained, but to have them think I was an opera star was like, whoa, I guess I must have sung well and acted well. So in my scripted things, I've had people really enjoy that. I did Gypsy. I was Mama Rose in that. I had a lot of positive response from that. In fact, I had middle-aged women who would come up to me afterwards and go, when you were up there singing Rose's song, I imagined myself up there doing that. I could never do that. And so again, it's that sense of my doing this is not for me. In fact, it was the first time I think I really understood that being a performer is not about me. It's about allowing other people to somehow express or have that feeling of being heard again. So that was in Aiken, the Gypsy one. Mikado was also in Aiken, but I had done some stuff in Maryland. I'd had one show I was in up there. I don't think I had a huge response for up there. I had sung in a French restaurant, and I played a lot of cover songs, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, a lot of the 60s folk stuff. And people loved it. I had people come up. I was at it was called Le Cellier de Moi, the Monk Cellar. And they had a speaker that went out to the street. This was in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And I had a couple of people who came in and said they were absolutely sure that's Joan Baez in there. We got to get in there. She's not advertised, but we got to go in there. And they came and they sat and they listened. So I felt like that was, whoa, to be, and Joan Baez has been a big influence on my singing. And I do think I have a similar vocal quality. So in that way, yes, I think it was responsive, but I have never been good at selling myself. I've never been good at, it's like what you're saying about, what people say about your art or whatever. I've never really known what people thought. It's like my anxiety on stage and afterwards has been so extreme that it's like, as soon as it's over, I don't stay very long. It's not that I don't want to talk to people, but it's like I'm scared to. And so I don't get the message back of what it meant to them a lot of times. And I only found out a few years ago how anxious I am. And I can be anxious around one person, let alone in a group. Now, it hasn't been too bad somehow or another in this poetry open mic. It hasn't. Maybe it's because Tamel is there. So I've got
I was going to say, you guys are like the perfect yin and yang, because he is so outgoing and so
he really is.
easily, his style adapts so easily for the internet and for marketing. And you're like the mastermind behind the scenes, pulling the strings and everything, and it works so well. And it's just such a safe space. And I was captivated the first time I saw you perform, and I thought, she's great. She's got a great stage presence. You had witty stage banter. The poetry was great. The songs were great. Your singing voice was amazing. But I got to get you to sing another song here, because I want to make sure we can get some more of your stuff. What's that?
Can I read you this poem first that I found?
Yeah. Go ahead.
And it may eventually end up as a song. It's called "Say Something Nice." Owie, zowie, mercy me, holy moly, gooey guacamole, boo boo bungaloni, let me be. Say something silly, say something nice, say something funny, say something twice. Not once, not never, not forever. Enough to be sure it is heard. Say something clever. Don't say those nasty, naughty, mean or haughty words. Stub a toe, it's okay to say ow. Say it again if it hurts you now. Say thank you that I have a toe, even though it hurts right now. It's okay to say ow and jump up and down and just watch where you land and be careful how. Spill a drink or drop a plate, make a mess or wake up late. It's okay to say oops, it's okay to sigh. It's okay to say I'm sorry and I need another try. Just don't complain, and don't blame anyone else. That would just be lame. Oh me, oh my, I'm too tired to think, too tired to stand. I'm right on the brink. I don't want a nap and I don't want a bath. I do want a hug and to snuggle near your back. Say something silly, say something nice, say something funny, say something twice. Not once, not never, not forever. Enough to be sure it is heard. Say something clever. Just don't say those nasty, naughty, mean or haughty words. Owie, zowie, mercy me, holy moly, gooey guacamole, boo boo bungaloni, let me be.
I love it. I'm going to give you a huge compliment. Whose style that reminds me of is Shel Silverstein.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Growing up,
and certainly, I'm sure I've been influenced there somehow.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like
I also feel like I've been influenced by the poets, including Tamel, in terms of the presentation. In fact, I feel like I'm learning from the poets. Cathy Bohannon, when she did her featured poetry thing the other night, I was like, oh man, I need to go back and think about or ask her or see if I can watch the video that Tamel did. Because and I've seen her perform different ways there at the open mic, but she was so physically into what she was doing. And one of the things that's happened to me in recent years, and really since coming to Aiken, and is that I stopped memorizing things. Number one, when I used to be, I would never have performed if I didn't have things perfectly memorized. And somehow or other, when I came here, I stopped memorizing stuff because I saw other singers who were up there with their sheet music, just reading their songs. And I was, oh, well, okay, so maybe I can do that. It was the biggest mistake I ever made because it disconnected me from the audience and it disconnected me from the songs.
Well, yeah, and as
Still,
you know, performing at a podium, and I do it too, where I'll have
yep,
the book I have out, or just new stuff on a
yeah,
notebook, and your energy goes down, and all that
yep,
energy is just reflecting right back to you, and everybody's just listening to you read. You might as well be reading a chapter in
that's
your
right.
English class.
That's right.
So,
That's right. So I don't know if I'll ever get back to where I can memorize stuff like that. I got so busy, and then, but I am aware of it. I'm aware that it affects how I perform. But I also have given myself permission to not be perfect. Um, um, which I used to, not that I was perfect, but I tried to be. I've given myself permission to just show up as I am and do as much as I can, that something will get across.
and it does. I'm here to
I
tell
do
you
want,
because I'm there in the audience, and it definitely comes across.
yeah,
And I know this is a generic thing to say, but it's true, which is no one's going to be you, Cathy.
that's right. That's
So
right.
especially if you're reading or performing something for the first time, how would we know how it's supposed
Exactly.
to go? We have
Exactly.
no
Exactly.
idea.
I
So we're
remember
right there
early
with you.
on.
We're hanging on every word. I get up there and I'm reading stuff, and I'm just like,
Yep.
it's like I can't even read my own chicken
That's
scratch
right. That's
sometimes,
right.
so.
One of the earliest, I don't know if you call it critiques or suggestions as a performer that I got repeatedly when I was first singing in restaurants and bars and stuff was, don't ever apologize.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure I still do it, but not like I used to. But sometimes what bothers me most right now is when I go to sing something and my sinuses start draining and I'm coughing and I can't get it out. That's the part that worries me most. And that's happening in part, I think, because I'm not singing enough.
Right.
I'm not doing as much as I used to. So one of my hopes is that I won't lose my voice or my skill or my motivation by the time I retire, so that I can maybe start focusing on the stuff again and get it going. I am hoping to do some recording this year, and hoping that will motivate me more. I do have a couple of gigs lined up. None of my gigs are paying gigs. I just have to do it out of the fact that I love to do it.
That's the important thing, because you
Yeah,
know what?
and
That comes across.
yeah, and
That you love to do
usually,
it.
very often when I do it, it's as a fundraiser for something. Um, and even like one of the things I'm going to be doing is in June, I'm going to be singing as part of Rob Foster and Friends performance of Alzheimer's Longest Day. He does this every year. He's a excellent musician and professor of music at Augusta U. In fact, I hope I can someday go over there and study some jazz with him and with the other musicians over there. But every year he does this in honor of his father, who had Alzheimer's. And I've been super, super honored to be asked to sing as part of that. I've done it a few times. I have one song on YouTube that if you go to that song, it has a link that will allow somebody to go and make a contribution to that. But it's a song that I wrote in honor of my mother-in-law, who's gone now, but who had dementia. And but it's one that I did during COVID, and I couldn't be there for the concert, but I put that online for that. I may or may not sing that one this year. I've got to look at some other stuff. I have one thing in mind. I'm thinking of writing for it if I can get it done by June. It's actually, I don't even know exactly what it's going to say, but it has to do with loving someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. And the statement, someone close to me said this about someone else close to me, that they are the reason I am alive. They're the
Wow.
for staying alive. And they were saying this about the one who's got the issue. And I know it's true. When you've got somebody that you love like that, having someone you love is definitely a reason for staying alive. And but I thought, to be able to say this to someone who may be worrying about the fact that their memory isn't as good and they can't do the things that they did before, they think they don't have as much value in life, they are still very valuable to the ones who love them. And even if they can't do as much for the one that loves them, it's such an honor to be able to take care of somebody that you love.
Mhm.
It's really having that mission, having that's our connection to life. So anyway, I'd like to write something about that, and I don't know what it's going to be. It's like, how do I write this and have it be a happy, cheerful, just a reminder of
Well,
how much.
sometimes things are just trial and error, sometimes
Yeah,
bits and pieces come to you, and you just got to take them as they come. But as we're getting close to the end here, I want to make
Yeah,
sure we can get
right.
another song in
Yeah.
there for you for the folks, because I can
You
see
have an
that
idea of
it's
what you'd
getting
like me to
dark
do?
outside where you
Oh,
are.
yeah, you can tell. Sorry, I'm now
Okay.
getting very witchy. Have you got something you'd like me to do that you know of?
No, I figure, just whatever's handy, whatever the closest thing is, and people will just be happy to hear whatever you like to share.
If
So
you want, I could do that those Transylvania days.
yeah, go ahead. If you got it ready to go,
You may
I'll cue it up.
recognize the melody. I'm gonna be looking down because I'm looking at the words.
You're okay.
So I was this is another thing for if you're in a show. One of the things that was told me was if you're the first voice that's heard in a show, you were very important to the whole pace of the show.
Yeah, you set the tone.
So you set that tone. So what this is, welcome to Transylvania. We are known for our beautiful Carpathian mountains and our dark and mysterious legends. Once upon a time, there was a castle where we used to clean a moat or two. Remember how we traveled away the hours, dream of all the evil we would do. Those Transylvania days, Carpathian forest ways, we'd fly by night, forever sleep through days. We'd bite the necks we choose, drink blood of every hue, for we were young and sure to have our way. La da da, die, 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 die. Sharpest daggers swiftly severed silent screams, a threat to all who entered ill-advised. Tower shadows battling black pulled toward magnetic moon. Love's eternal prison, none could e'er escape their doom. Those Transylvania days, mystical magic maze, we'd hunt all night, breathe in the naked haze. And if our hearts should lose Carpathian mountain views, return back home for one dark final day. Once I tried to see my own reflection. No go, how well, such a shame. As you took off, I heard you call my name. Darling, you have gone the wrong direction, and you are not listening again. Those Transylvania days, mystical magic days, we'd hunt all night, breathe in the naked haze. And if our hearts should lose Carpathian mountain views, return back home for one dark final gaze. Soon the bloody years of decades rushed right by us. We lost our frightful notions on the way. If by chance I'd see you in the coffin, we'd smile at one another and we'd say, those Transylvania days, mystical magic ways, we'd fly by night, forever sleep through days. We'd bite the necks we choose, drink blood of every hue. Those were the days, those Transylvania days. Our voices softly trembled as you looked inside my soul, as if through water passing by a long, long, long road. But fate decreed not to unite us even once again. The past covered with ashes, farewell to our velvet skin. Dorogoid lino you, danno no you. Das bist nicht toll, stoff dalle titrenja. Das durch starino you, das semistrum no you. Stopono chom, tak muti lamenya. La da 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 da. I die da die die die. Die 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 die. those were the days, those Transylvania days. Dorogoy, Tonino, you, Dorogoy, Tonino, you.
Yay. That was so great.
Long, Long Road was the name of the original Russian.
Oh, okay.
That was the translation of it. Anyway, crazy song.
I love it. Yeah, I remember you performing that at the open
Yeah.
mic, and it was fantastic.
I'm hoping to do a novelty, either this year or next year, to do a novelty record that would include some Halloween stuff and some Christmas stuff that I wrote. And I'd probably stick this one in there too.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, as we're wrapping it up here, I'd like for you to tell the folks what's coming up next for you and where can people find your work online.
Okay. What's coming up next? So February 8th, I'm going to be, if you look on Facebook, there's something called G City Rockers, which is John Stoney Cannon's band. And Vicki Grady has a place out in Georgia, which I don't know the name of at the moment, but I'll be going to Georgia for that. And but you may want to look him up and look that G City Rockers up, because Vicki and I will be doing some songs before the band, and then they'll have an open mic after. So there'll be musicians there doing some other stuff afterwards. And then I'm going to be doing in March, I think it is, like around the 4th, maybe a little later than that, maybe like the 15th. East Wind Castle will be having their Renaissance fair that they call Dragon Fair, and I will be singing there. A lot of it will be old medievally kind of songs or folk kind of songs. I will have a few in there, including my dragon song that I wrote for another Renaissance fair. But I had learned some medieval stuff back when I was in college, so I'll be doing some stuff there, and there'll be belly dancers and there'll be Shakespearean actors and all kinds of stuff. East Wind is a great place to perform or just to go. It's outside and it's a great family venue, even though there's a lot of the people are pagan, but it's not about paganism. It's just about having a good time. There are families that come there, the children get to do all kinds of games and they get knighted at the end of it, and there's some vendors there and stuff. But that'll be in March. And then in June, I'll be doing the thing in Augusta for the Alzheimer's. So those are the ones that are coming up immediately. I am hoping to have some recordings later in the year. In April, we're hoping to do another National Poetry Month event. Instead of doing it during the middle of the week, we're going to try and do it on a Saturday. I think it's the 26th of April. And I'm not sure yet what the hours are going to be or who our speakers will be, but we hope to have some workshops going on for that and have a little bit of an open mic. We'll still have our our April poetry open mic. We have an open mic every third Thursday at the Aiken County Public Library from 6 o'clock until 7:45. Best to get there by 5:30 or 5:45 to sign up if you're going to do the open mic. Otherwise, you're always welcome as a guest to listen in and maybe be inspired to come back and try your own hand at presenting. So there's always lots of stuff going on.
Okay, well, let the folks know where they can find you online. I know you have a YouTube.
I have a very old website that I haven't updated in years called it's just www.cathybenedetto.com, and it has some links to, I think, to Reverb Nation and to Bandcamp, and maybe one other place. Tells you a little bit about me, not much. It's one page with the links at the bottom. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook music page called Southern Perfume. I have a song called Southern Perfume that I'm hoping to do a newer recording of. But there are some of my songs are on there. On YouTube, if you look under Cathy Benedetto or under Katka, Katka, which is my Czechoslovakian nickname, I have some songs on there. Some of them are covers, and like I have the one that I think you used, I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas. I think that one's on there. I may have Santa Baby on there. I'm not real sure. I do have that one that is the one that's for the Alzheimer's one. It's called either Along My Way or the Daffodil Song. But anyway, there's some on YouTube. And Bandcamp, I have an EP that's got 6 songs on it. That's probably the most produced piece that I have. The 6 songs, 3 of them I wrote based on a series of novels by Anne Height, who's a Georgia author, who was Georgia Author of the Year for Ghost on Black Mountain. So it's got those 3 songs. It's got 3 other songs. They've all got kind of an eerie but fun kind of thing. One of them is a lullaby that somebody said it sounded like a funeral for a baby, but it's not the way it originally started out, but it ended up that way because of the lap steel in it. But that has Scott Terry engineered it, and Matt Dahlheimer and Scott both played along with me on the guitars, and they put in some steel that made it sound really good. Those are on there. And then there's another EP that's just 2 songs. One is called Are We Having Any Fun? Or the Farm Song. And it's one that was written in honor of my mother-in-law when we were prepping dinner and creating stuff. And it's a lot of different animal stuff in it. And then there's one on there called Winter's End, which I think is a beautiful song. And it's my song about meeting her parents for the first time, and the fact that her father's ghost was looking over, it's like and nobody's watching us at Winter's End. But he's gone, but he, his spirit shows up from time to time to remind us, at least for me, shows up to remind me how to get along when things don't feel so good, how to stick with it and how to stay present. And so anyway, those songs are on there.
Thank you so much. Well, you were delightful, as I
you.
knew you would be, and your songs were great, your poems were great. I loved all the stories. So with that, we will say adieu, and I will take us out here and try to hold this note. You're welcome. I will try to hold this note for this song that referenced here at the beginning. No, I'm gonna cut right to the end. So this
Let me just say though that one of these days you need to let me and Tamel interview you on here.
I think that could be doable.
I think that would be a great one.
Okay, well, you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And with that, I will say, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.